Welcome back to Harbor. When it comes to President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, there's new evidence today that Trump wants to, in the words of Tammy Wynette, stand by his man. Lawmakers are bracing for a showdown now with the administration after the White House signaled today that the president will might veto new U.S. sanctions on Russia. Well, that sanctions bill passed overwhelmingly in the Senate this evening, 98-2 in the Senate. It passed the House on Tuesday with only 3 votes against it, 419-3. They're both veto-proof, meaning they're both guaranteed by any normal estimate of getting 2/3 vote plus 1 in both houses, which means the president will be overridden for the first time, and that means big international news. Nevertheless, Anthony Scaramucci said this morning that Trump may veto the bill anyway, saying the president will be tougher on Russia without the sanctions. Yes, let's watch him.
He's looking at these sanctions right now. He may decide to veto the sanctions and
Why?
be tougher on the Russians than the Congress.
Oh, so you think that if he vetoes it, it's because he wants something tougher than what they have in the sanctions bill?
He may sign this. He may sign the sanctions exactly the way they are, or he may veto the sanctions and negotiate an even tougher deal against the Russians.
Well, I think Chris Cuomo was right to question the logic of that. Anyway, those showdowns over the sanctions comes as tensions between the Republican-controlled U.S. Congress and Trump. The Trump White House have deepened this week over reports that the president may try to replace his attorney general. I'm joined right now in the middle of this ruckus by the Hardball Roundtable. Jason Johnson, of course, is an MSNBC contributor and politics editor at The Root. Ayesha Rasco is the White House correspondent for Reuters, and Jeremy Peters is political reporter at the New York Times. You just gave me some news in the break here. Apparently, the Times is going to go verbatim with the gross language, including the F word, we know what that's going to be, that was used by Scaramucci in this diatribe with the New Yorker magazine. That's rare.
No, it is rare, but this was done in consultation with top editors and Dean Beck.
Why do you think your editors decided that the American people need to know the verbatim language of this new White House communications director?
Well, I'll read to you exactly what Cliff Levy, our deputy managing editor, said. He posted to Twitter. You can check it out on his Twitter feed if you want. But he says, you know, we concluded, this is the top editors, we concluded it was newsworthy that the Trump aide used such language, and we didn't want our readers to have to search elsewhere to find out what Scaramucci said. I think it was really that simple. And honestly, it almost seems quaint looking back in the 90s when we were having this big debate about whether the Times would publish the F word when discussing the Starr Report. I mean, that's how much the standards and norms have changed.
Isn't that great? Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who was so wise in so many of these issues, said we have defined deviancy downward.
Yep.
You can use any language. Mommy, I mean, I think it was tricky here trying to decide how we would say it with expletive, and even we had a hard time. We actually made a mistake and showed a word by accident, and I mean by accident. We talked about it for hours to figure out how to do this thing. It's a weird world where the top spokesman for the White House, who's just taking office, not quite in office yet, decides to talk like this on the record to a major magazine, the New Yorker magazine, knowing we're hearing it, knowing the chief of staff who he's attacking and grossing out is hearing it, and the president of the United States who's sort of keeping this romper room together, or not. What's going on? Is this part of Trumpet's effort? Trumpet, that's an interesting phrase.
Right.
Exactly. Trump is trying to create so much mayhem and confusion, we can't remember why we think he's blowing it.
This is par for the course, Chris. Like, this is the kind of language that Trump wants. This is what his base likes. This shows he's tough. This shows he's different. He doesn't care about norms. He doesn't care about standards. All of this is perfectly fine for this administration. It's only going to be a problem when Scaramucci becomes more famous than Trump, and then he's going to want to fire him.
We've seen that.
Yeah, it's going to happen when he gets his SNL character and everything else like that. But until now, he thinks this is fine. This is how this White House wants to communicate.
So this does create a distraction, but I mean, it's a distraction also from the messages that they're trying to get through. I mean, tomorrow they're going to be going and talking about fighting MS-13 and all these things. So, I mean, you know, these are messages that they claim they want to get out to the public.
You start on this, though. We know the biggest story of the year is probably going to be Russia, and it may be next year as well. And the question of how much is Russia causing the President of the United States to tag along with their interests? To what extent are we really being driven as a country with the interests of another country? Because Putin seems to always get his way. And now we have the President of the United States, through this new guy, Scaramucci, saying he's probably going to veto a bill. In other words, he's going to send a signal to the world that even though the U.S. Congress has just passed over his veto sanctions against the Russians and Putin, that he doesn't believe in them.
Well,
That's a hell of a statement.
And he's making the argument that he wants to be tougher on Russia. But if he wants to be tougher,
I can say BS. I can say that.
Yeah, he could put.
And we all know that is an old term for that. Yeah, it's called loving something to death.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not even enough. No, I would do much more. Let me ask you this about Jeremy. The Russian vote, because everything else is going to be Russian. The fact that he now sticks his neck out and says, I don't care if 419 members against 3 in a Republican Congress in the House, and that 98-2 in a Republican-dominated Senate all believe Russia is our adversary, and I don't.
Mm-hmm. I think what I'm looking for, what we should all be kind of eyeing as this, if the override indeed happens, is this the point at which the Republican Congress really starts to break from President Trump? Are the cracks widening? Because so far you've seen a Congress that has been highly deferential to the president. Every time he does something outrageous, they excuse away and apologize for it. And it's stopping.
Did you see me with Blumenthal? He's a Democrat, but we talked to him. I talked to him. What's going on when Lindsey Graham, who begins to look more and more like a character out of Advice and Consent, a loyalist to the institution, like a Steve Cooley, the guy, the old Southern who actually did care about the institution. He's beginning to sound like a way a senator's supposed to sound.
Well, Lindsey Graham,
there's a law and there's a constitution, and we're going to enforce it.
Lindsey Graham is sounding like what we think John McCain actually is. I mean, when he stands out there and says, look, if you get rid of Sessions, there will be heck to pay. There's going to be a problem.
Okay, we're going to back in a minute. The roundtable sticking with us. They're going to tell me things I don't know in just about a minute. And this is Hardball, where the action is.